So I think if you have anybody listening here who's going, I do everything right, I don't drink too much caffeine, I wind down, I turn off my screens hours before bed, and I still can't sleep, actually to reassure that person, those things are part of the problem. Actually, you're doing a lot of stuff to try and sleep. If you enjoy a chamomile tea, have one. If you enjoy a bath, have one, but don't do it because you think it's going to make you fall asleep. So even if you've only had a week's worth of wake-ups at 3 a.m, if you were to put these things in place, you'd have fixed it by the end of that week. We can nip it in the bud quickly.
Kathryn, welcome to my kitchen. How are you?
Good, thank you. Thanks for having me. This is gorgeous. Love your kitchen.
No, it's so good to have you. I'm so excited to deep dive on all things sleep. We haven't had anyone talk about sleep, so I've got a million questions for you.
That's interesting that you haven't had anyone, because I think that it does seem to sort of stray into lots of other areas. You know, somebody who talks about health and wellbeing will often cover sleep.
I know, so true. Do you mind giving a quick elevator pitch to kick things off, who you are and what you do?
Yeah, of course. So my name is Kathryn Pinkham and I'm the founder of the Insomnia Clinic. So my background is working in psychological services in the NHS. And about 15 years ago, I did some training in sleep and insomnia. And for me, it just made complete sense. And I could see at the time that poor sleep was always considered just a symptom of something else. So if we fix the other problem, the sleep would get better. But it became really apparent over the years that that's just not the case. Someone can come saying, yeah, well, I know what the trigger was, but the trigger's now gone. I'm no longer stressed, or I'm not menopausal, or, you know, I got a new job and I still can't sleep and I haven't been able to sleep since. So I found that really fascinating, this idea that why sleep wasn't sort of considered its own, you know, an issue in its own right, because we all know what a huge impact poor sleep has, you know, to the point where if our diet's great and our exercise routine is great, but we don't sleep well, we're still going to feel rubbish. It's a really difficult thing to sort of bypass. You know, we have to get some good sleep. So I've been working in sleep for about 15 years. Originally, as I say, in the NHS as a consultant and one-to-one with people. And now I have, since lockdown, actually, I moved to an online course because a lot of people don't need therapy to improve their sleep. They need to understand a CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia program. And that doesn't necessarily require us to look back at where it came from, to dig deep into all your anxieties. For a lot of people, they just need to understand, how do I reset my body clock? How can I take some pressure off sleep so that I can do it better? How can I get better quality of sleep? And all of those things can be done in a step-by-step way in your own time. So where I'm at the moment is we're seeing a huge rise in sleep problems since COVID, cost of living, people working from home. There's lots of factors now that are all playing into you know, 24-hour society, phones, screens. They're just, you know, a small part of it. So sleep problems are on the rise, but so are treatments for sleep problems. And the difficulty is at the moment, there's a lot of noise in the area of sleep and a lot of it's not very accurate. So a lot of tips that involve people spending money or tracking obsessively that aren't going to work. So I guess what I'm passionate about, and the reason I like to do these chats with people, is to say there are some really simple changes that we can all make that will deal with the root problem here. We are all born with the ability to sleep. We know how to do it. Our bodies know how to do it. We just have to remind them. We don't need to buy lots of stuff. We don't need to track it. We don't need to change everything. So hopefully for your listeners, it will be take some of the pressure off and probably doing less than what they're doing now, which would be nice.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny how the issues with sleep are getting worse because also the awareness of how important sleep is increasing.
Yeah.
And I feel like maybe that's kind of adding to the pressure of people then being able to sleep well, or putting the pressure on themselves to get the best night's sleep.
Yeah. And, you know, every day there's an article or some clickbait somewhere around, it's proven if you don't get 8 hours of sleep, you're going to get Alzheimer's, or it's connected to heart disease, and so on and so on. And I'm not saying that those things aren't true, but there are also lots of factors involved. You know, if you slept really well every night, but your diet was terrible, your stress levels were through the roof, and you never exercised, you probably would end up with some sort of long-term disease that way as well. So there's lots of things to consider. But where I come from as as an insomnia specialist, so somebody who's trying to help people sleep better, is that amount of pressure is never going to help us to sleep well. So if you're somebody who just doesn't bother prioritizing sleep, then you need to read that stuff. You need to understand that you should prioritize it. The vast majority of people do care about sleep. And certainly all the people I work with, they want to sleep better. So for them, being sort of hammered constantly with this message that if you don't sleep well, this is going to happen, it's not helping them. And I always remind people, you know, babies are born not sleeping. if this was something we couldn't cope with, then it's a fundamental flaw in our system. So we are designed to cope with sleep loss for short periods. It's normal. It's normal not to sleep well if you're stressed. It's normal not to sleep well if you've had a new baby. There's women and men out there who've had 10, 15 kids and live to be 100. There are lots of factors. So of course I want people to prioritize sleep, but I think at the moment there's just a little bit too much noise and mess, and people are trying very hard to get this perfect sleep. And that in itself is going to cause the problem, because you're absolutely right. Sleep problems are on the rise, but so is all the health and wellness around getting better sleep. So what's going wrong? And I think it's too much information, not all correct.
Yeah, so interesting. I have lots of questions for you about all things sleep, but before we do that, I have a quick fire round about all things food, just to kick things off.
Oh, okay.
So, cook in or eat out?
Oh, eat out.
What is your favourite restaurant in London?
I don't come into London much, but we went to the Piccolo Italian in Covent Garden that everyone talks about.
Oh, I haven't been to that.
Is it called Piccolo? Yeah. Well, I'll send you it. You can say. But it was delicious.
Amazing.
Yeah, really quirky.
What was your go-to Deliveroo or takeaway?
Sushi.
Yeah, good one. And what's your go-to cuisine?
Italian, probably.
Yeah. And what's your go-to fridge or cupboard staple, which isn't the basics?
Digestive biscuits.
Oh my God, we haven't had that one on here. Yes.
Does that count as a staple?
That does. Yeah. As in that's something that's always in your cupboard.
Yeah, I'm obsessed with them at the moment. And tea.
That. Yeah, I love that. And what's your favourite dish to cook at home?
Oh God, I'm not good at cooking. But I to justify that, it's because I've got two kids who don't really appreciate anything I cook. I'd say I cook a good spaghetti bolognese. Oh, and a roast. I'm really good at a roast.
Yes. I think my mum would also say she's not very good at cooking, but she also does a really good roast.
Yeah,
I think if you can do that well, you're good.
Yeah, and I excel at Christmas dinner. That's
okay. Well, that's really, a good one to excel at. Yeah,
so I go big. None of the little ones. Just
I love
the big glory event. That's mine.
Amazing. So let's start with, what are the main reasons that people struggle to sleep? Because I feel like when you say I can't sleep, that's very broad. And I feel like there's actually probably a few reasons why someone might not be able to. So what are those?
So the reasons why people can't sleep are, they can vary from, it can be something enormous and obvious, like a bereavement, a divorce, a new job, exams, poor health. Anything that would cause you any sort of stress or disruption in your normal routine. So it can be something really obvious. It can be more of a slow burn. So just generally you haven't slept very well for a while and then it's getting worse. For some people, they have no idea. But what we focus on and what's more important than what's causing it is what's keeping it going. So stress is a big factor in poor sleep, because if stress triggers your insomnia, then stress is a part of it to be dealt with. If stress was nothing to do with the reason your insomnia was triggered, you're then going to become stressed about the insomnia. So I guess if we had to pick one thing, we'd say that one way or another, worry and anxiety is going to be in there, whether it's kicked it off or whether it's become a symptom of it. But what happens is anything can cause the insomnia, that can trigger the problem. But as time goes on, the way that we deal with the problem is what keeps it going. So, for example, if I was to go to bed tonight and I just couldn't get to sleep, which for me would be unusual, so I'd notice it pretty quickly. So tomorrow I would be aware, I'd feel tired, maybe I'd have a little bit more coffee. Maybe I cancel going to the gym in the afternoon because I'm a bit tired and sluggish, so I don't have a great day at work. So I go to bed tomorrow night with sleep on my mind, and then it happens again. So let's say in a week's time, this has been going on for a week now. In a week's time, I'm going to be really aware of it. So I've probably Googled it by now. I'm going to bed earlier because I want to try and get to sleep. I'm maybe getting up a bit later. Perhaps I'm having a nap. Maybe I'm drinking more caffeine. Maybe I'm drinking more or less alcohol to try and fall asleep, or I'm cutting it out. But what I'm doing is I'm starting to make changes to my life. Let's say 2 months goes by. I'll have probably bought something by now. I'll have bought a few things. I'll be tracking it perhaps. I'll be Googling it, asking other people. Maybe I go to the doctor. Maybe they suggest some sleep hygiene. So not too much caffeine, not too much alcohol, the obvious health stuff. Time goes on, and what we see happening over time is that everybody does the same things. So we become much more vigilant about the problem. So we go from not caring about sleep, not thinking about it, just an assumption that it's going to happen, to all of a sudden being hyper aware. So I'm getting into bed with an awareness of something that doesn't come if I'm aware of it. By focusing on it, I can't do it. It's a bit like breathing. If I focus too hard on breathing, it becomes weird. Same with sleep. If we try too hard, we can't do it. So I'm hyper vigilant about something that by paying that much attention to isn't working. I'm going to bed earlier. So if you imagine the sleep is basically built on this appetite for sleep. So when you wake up in the morning until you go to bed at night, you are building this appetite. So this drive, this natural drive to sleep well. So if your drive is nice and high when you get into bed, you'll fall asleep quickly, you'll take back a nice depth of sleep, and you'll wake up at the end. And when things start to go wrong, most of us tend to start going to bed a bit earlier or spending more time in bed. From a body clock point of view, it doesn't work because my drive is not high enough. So I'm thinking, well, I'm tired because I didn't get enough sleep last night, so I'll go to bed at 9. My body clock is saying, I don't know why we're in bed at 9. I have no sort of relationship with this time and being asleep. My melatonin production's not there yet, so I haven't developed my sleepy hormone as much as I need to. And my appetite for sleep isn't very high. So I lie in bed for an hour. You know, we all know what it's like. An hour's passed. I'm a little bit hot and bothered now. I'm starting to ruminate a bit. I'm stressing because it's already 10 and I'm still not asleep. And you can see how that cycle carries on. So in treatment, we're not looking at how we got here. There are obvious changes. You know, age can change our sleep, pregnancy, hormones, as I say, stress, environment, big, you know, life changes. These can all trigger it. And to a certain extent, that's normal. And if you go back to normal, which most people do, then there's no problem. But when the problem hasn't gone away, it's what we then do that is causing the issue. So we're looking at what's maintaining this. How is your body clock now changed to adapt to this new pattern? Because your body clock doesn't know what's right and what's wrong. It will just continue with the pattern that you're giving it. So if I wake up at 3 a.m. every morning, racing mind, and I lie there for an hour, my body will assume that's what I want to do from now on. So every morning, 3 a.m., I'll wake up, I'll check the time, I'll lie in bed ruminating, and then I will worry about it the next day. So my body's just doing as it's told. So that treatment is around how do I reset that body clock and make a stronger drive to get to sleep? And how do I take this pressure off? How do I stop worrying about it? Does that make sense? So it's not too much about how we get here, it's how we get out.
This episode is sponsored by Zuki. If, like me, you're interested in supplements and love to feel your best, then you need to try Zuki's range of liposomal supplements. They have been clinically proven to provide 4 times the amount of absorption compared to conventional supplements, which means you feel the benefits faster. They also come in a delicious single-serve sachet, which means you can look forward to taking your supplements every day. My current favourite is vitamin B12, which tastes just like strawberry. If you are interested in trying Zuki, they have given all catch-up listeners a chance to receive a free taster pack. This includes vitamin C, D, B12, collagen, and turmeric. To receive your free pack, click the link in the show notes. Thank you so much, Zuki, for sponsoring the podcast. Now let's get back to the episode. It's so interesting you say about like not going to bed early, because like that's the natural thing. Like I'm tired. Oh my God, early night tonight. How many times have I said that? And I'm a funny one with sleep. Like I'm very good at kind of health and wellness and listening to my body, but sleep is the one thing that I will sacrifice over anything else. So I will be like, no matter what, I'll get up and I'll go to the gym. No matter what, I will have a good meals throughout the day. I love cooking. I love healthy food. So nutrition and movement are up there. Sleep is the one thing. If I go to bed later because I'm socializing or whatever, I will then get up at the same time. Like I will rather than be like, no, I'll push my wake up a bit later so I get that time. I'm really bad. But what I would love to know is about routine, because I feel like one of the things you mentioned there is like routine and how our body clearly likes routine. So if you've gone to bed early and you're then lying there, the worst feeling, it's now 10 o'clock and you're putting pressure on yourself, you're checking the time, blah, blah, blah. So are you saying that our body likes routine and to kind of starve ourselves of a bit of sleep in order that our body then wants it more?
That's exactly it. We're starving. So we're using sleep deprivation to your advantage. So someone who's already sleep deprived goes, oh God, now you want me to go to bed later. That's horrible. But actually we're saying it's just short term. We're just going to use it to our advantage for a little bit. We're going to say to your body, okay, from now on, you're only going to be in bed between 11 and 6. That's the new pattern. And if you don't allow yourself to do anything other than that, then your body will have to get in line and it will start to do it. So the routine is really interesting because our body clock is a clock. So we thrive on routine, and it's not just sleep and wake. It's temperature, thirst, hunger, when we use the toilet, all of those are in that 24-hour cycle. So you obviously have in your cycle, you know, the ability to get up and go to the gym. Your body is geared up at that time now for that sort of activity. It knows what you're going to do, and you eat regularly, and your body is ready for those things. So routine is important. I think one of the problems we have at the moment is that in this sort of wellness space, there is a lot of, as I say, misinformation. So first thing people say is go to bed early. Worst advice ever. If you're already sleeping badly, don't go to bed early. Secondly, spending an hour in your bedroom creating a routine where you're listening to something, you've lit a candle, you've perhaps had a chamomile tea, you're doing some yoga, you're doing some mindfulness. None of these things, they're all designed to relax us. And I'm all up for relaxation. It's amazing for all the reasons that we know. But it's not a cure for sleep problems. There are plenty of people who are stressed who sleep well, and plenty of people who are relaxed who don't sleep well. So relaxation is not a cure for insomnia. It's a cure for anxiety and stress, and it's a way to make you feel better. So it's part of the puzzle, but it's not the missing piece. So if you spend all evening in your bedroom trying to wind down, I think trying is the key here, it's not going to work. All you've done is spend an entire hour building up to not sleeping. So routine, like it can be, so I would go to bed, clean my teeth, put my pajamas on, read my Kindle for 10 minutes. That's my routine. It doesn't need to be any longer than that. I connect those things to sleeping and I would fall asleep. So I think if you have anybody listening here who's going, I do everything right. I don't drink too much caffeine. I wind down. I turn off my screens hours before bed, so on and so on. And I still can't sleep. Actually, to reassure that person, those things are part of the problem. Actually, you're doing a lot of stuff to try and sleep. I would say forget all of that. Just go back to basics. Do what you enjoy in the evenings. Watch TV. Stay out the bedroom as long as you can. Read a book. Certainly wind down. If you enjoy a chamomile tea, have one. If you enjoy a bath, have one. But don't do it because you think it's going to make you fall asleep.
Interesting.
And that way you're taking this pressure off. So you get into bed at the point where you're actually just really tired, and then you'll fall asleep.
So I want to touch on the relationship between you and your bedroom, because you keep saying stay out of the bedroom, stay out of the bedroom, which makes a lot of sense. But can you go into that in more detail? Because there's a lot of people who work in their bedroom, relax in their bedroom, watch TV in their bedroom, may even eat in their bedroom. So why should we stay out of our bedroom? So
it's a bit like if you imagine with a baby, we have a cot for them and we teach them how to sleep in that cot for a certain period of that 24 hours. If we were to play with them, feed them, do everything in the cot and then just suddenly flick the light off, they wouldn't sleep because there's no connection there. So we're animals and we learn everything. Everything is a learnt behavior. So what lockdown did was it moved everybody to their bedroom. So people who previously went to offices and they had a nice routine that involved getting up at a certain time, having a commute, which was a natural way of sort of getting ready for the day, a commute home, which was a natural wind down. Come home, your home is for sleeping and home stuff, your work is for your work. What lockdown did was it merged that. So no one had to get up at the same time anymore. We were at home a lot. We were in our bedrooms a lot. So that connection has become very weak for lots of people, certainly the younger generations, people who it's always been their norm now to kind of work from home. So if you're using your bedroom for lots of other stuff and you sleep fine, then it's okay. If you are struggling to sleep well, then it is important to spend as little time as you can in your bedroom. Basically, your bedroom should be reserved for sex and sleeping, especially if you've got a problem. So it's not to say that you can't ever watch a film in bed or have a lie-in. Of course you can. But whilst we're trying to fix the problem, let's reserve the bed for what it's meant for. Because if you imagine that you spend all evening in there trying to wind down, and then you get a couple of hours sleep, and then you're awake again at 1 and you're ruminating for a couple of hours, what you've actually got there is a sort of a 50-50 connection between bed and sleep, but bed and wakefulness. So the more time I spend in bed feeling anxious, stressed, hot and bothered, the more likely it is going to become that my bed will become a cue for that feeling. So some people will say, I fall asleep on the sofa, I'm totally relaxed all evening watching telly. The second my head hits the pillow, I'm wide awake. And that's because your head touching the pillow is a cue for, it's a threat response. Your threat response is saying, we don't like being in here. This doesn't feel good. I don't relate this to anything good anymore. It's a battleground. Essentially, your bedroom is becoming somewhere where you're going in to try and fight. So lots of tips that I can give you along the way, but yeah, spend as little time as you can in your bedroom, which is better advice than check, because I know that a lot of us, we change the whole bedroom, change your beds, change the lights. Of course, make it a nice place to be, but it doesn't matter how nice it is if you're in there doing something that doesn't feel nice.
So interesting. What about when we get into bed, our head hits a pillow, and like you say, suddenly our brain is going a million miles an hour. This is my issue. And you're like, oh, to do this, oh, tomorrow I got to do this and this and this and this, oh, and this and this. And like, I'm like, these are really small things. I don't need to be thinking about what my breakfast is going to be tomorrow and the fact that I need to text my mum about my Sunday plan. That's irrelevant. So why does that happen?
So I think that what happens for most people is that we're quite busy all day. So from the moment we wake up, we're busy. If we had a break, we're probably on our phones. There's always lots to be done. There's always a lot of admin and around life. And we live in a society where unless you make an effort to do nothing, you never really have to do nothing. You can always do something. And so my dad, for example, my dad works in a factory, and when he had a tea break, he had a tea break. He didn't do anything else because there was nothing else to do. So he just sat and had a cup of tea. So what that is a natural moment to sort of be grounded and just be present in that moment. And what happens is if we don't make an effort to process things that are going on in our lives, the optimum time for our mind and our brain to try and alert us to these things is going to be when it's quiet at night and there's nothing else to go on, nothing else to distract you with. So when people say to me, how do I stop the racing mind in bed? It's not just about that moment in bed. It's about the build up to it. So the best advice would be, if you have a sleep problem or if you were just somebody who gets anxious full stop, every single day you make a 15-minute window, probably after work. So once you've finished the work for the day and maybe you're getting into your evening, pen and paper, and you would write down everything that's on your mind, however small, even if it just ends up looking like a to-do list. Sometimes it will be worries, sometimes it will just be thoughts. But the therapeutic nature of this exercise is that you're saying to your brain, this is your time. I'm not going to bat anything away. I'm not going to ignore any of this. You know, just like with a friend, sometimes you just want someone to listen to you. You don't need any advice. I don't need to do anything about it. I just want you to listen to me. That's what you're going to do for yourself in this time. So you write it all down. It's really therapeutic because you will sometimes see in black and white, okay, I haven't got that much to worry about, or these things are tiny, I can do those in 2 seconds. It gives you this sort of different perspective. But what it's doing to your brain is it's saying, I've dealt with this stuff. I've done as much as I can do. And then the next step would be, I'd always encourage people I work with to then, if you have anxiety, is to split your list into two. The two columns are, the first one is a real problem. So a real problem is, I have lost my job, or I am ill. Those are real problems. They're actually happening. And the good thing about a real problem is, actually having a problem means there's usually something that you can do about it. There is an element of control. So you can start making a bit of a plan. If I've lost my job, okay, tomorrow I'm going to spend half an hour on LinkedIn. I'm going to contact X, Y, and Z. So I've made a plan, and I can reassure myself of that at 3 o'clock in the morning that I made my plan. The second column, and usually the far bigger column, is the what ifs. So what if I lose my job? What if this doesn't work? What if this career path I've taken is not right? What if I can't lose weight, or I can't sleep and I'm going to look worse? Like whatever those things might be. The amazing thing about our brains is that we can feel just as bad imagining something happening as if it's actually happening. And it's a really clever way of keeping us safe, because I can imagine how awful it would be to step into a fire, so I don't step into a fire. You know, if I saw I was about to get hit by a car, my adrenaline would get me out of that situation. So it's really clever, but we only have one threat response, and it's triggered whether I'm thinking about it or whether it's happening. So what that means is that in this what if list, I am triggering that adrenaline response at night. So what if I lose my job, for example, is going to trigger that same adrenaline response and keep me awake even longer at night time. But if in the day I write it down in this column and I spend some time, you know, how true is this? Okay, let's say the worst case occurred and I did lose my job, what would I do? Because there's no point pretending that's not bad. We're not talking about pretending to be positive here when I don't feel positive. We're talking about, but realistically, what would I do? So if I was to lose my job tomorrow, that absolutely would have negative impacts, but it's not the end of my world. You know, I'm not going to end everything because I lose my job tomorrow. There are other things that are important to me as well. So we're not pretending to be positive. We're just being a bit more realistic. So you can go through your what ifs, you can challenge them a bit. Some of them you just have to accept, I don't know. I have to tolerate the fact I don't know. And I'm going to have to learn to become okay with that. All of this exercise is just 15 minutes a day, every day. And you're training your brain to say, I respect that you're worried about something and I'm going to listen to you. I don't need to listen to you at 3 o'clock in the morning.
This is so interesting because I think it's kind of like journaling. And I went through a period of time of journaling at night. And it's because my morning routines are packed enough as they are, and I don't have time to journal in the morning. And so I was like, right, I'm going to journal at night, I'm going to get into it. And I was just kind of writing things down. And then I thought, no, I'm not going to do that anymore, because I feel like I'm stimulating my brain. And then I go to bed and I'm like, again. But actually, if I look back, I'm pretty sure I was actually fine going to bed after that, because I'm writing down everything before I go to bed. It's then gone out of my head, and then I can sleep. And my dad's the same. And he always struggles with like things coming to his mind at night, and he has a pen and paper by his bed, and then he just gets up and like writes it down and goes back. But actually he's probably the same. Like, he's so busy in the day, he's non-stop, like trying to get him to sit down is like, just take 5. He's not good at that, and neither am I. And actually that makes a lot of sense. If you're so fast paced in the day, the minute you take 5, everything comes into your head, which makes so much sense.
So you're sort of proactively saying to your body, okay, I've got 24 hours. I make time for the gym. I make time for my food. I make time to this, and this. Now I'm going to make time to process and notice what's in my head. And once I've noticed it, I'll decide if I need to do something with it. Most of the time you don't. You know, and most of us don't have hundreds of worries. We have 2 or 3, and they're the same sort of theme, whether that be finances or health or family, but they're kind of our triggering worries. And sometimes we just have to say to ourselves, I accept that I'm worried about it. You know, you don't have to find a solution to that. And that moment of going, yeah, I'm worried about that. And it might be irrational to everybody else, but I'm worried about it. That's enough. You know, that's the equivalent of a friend just being really empathic and going, yeah, I get that. That must be really hard for you. That's all you're doing to yourself. So yeah, make time for it, because you're proactively saying, whether I take my 5 minutes at 6 p.m. or it comes back and it takes it at 3 a.m., I'm going to make that choice, because it's coming one way or another. We can't ignore our brains for long. So in terms of that question of how do I stop a racing mind, you can't stop it in the moment, but you can preempt it coming and make it less likely. Then if we look at the moment that you're in, so let's say it's, 3 o'clock in the morning and you're lying awake and all those little things are going through your mind. What I say to people is the 15-minute rule. If you are wound up, if you're feeling anxious, if you're feeling frustrated, you've had a sip of water, you've turned your pillow over and you can't sleep, just leave the bedroom. There is nothing to be gained by staying in bed, because all that's going to happen is you're going to continue to feel more and more wound up and pressured. And even if you were to nod back off, it probably would be quite restless anyway. So just give up. As soon as you're in the battle and you're trying, forget it. So leave the bedroom, go into another room, read a book, watch TV. I wouldn't say, probably not, phones and laptops, but, TV's fine. And just change that emotional state that you're in. Remove yourself from the situation where you're creating a really bad and unhealthy connection. So you go into another room. As soon as you start to feel tired, you can go back to bed again, and you're going to set your alarm in the morning to keep that sleep window nice and tight. So you've gone to bed a little bit later, you're getting up a little bit earlier if you're struggling with sleep at the minute. If you can't sleep, you leave the bedroom altogether. So it's a combination of, I'm going to deal with it during the day, and I'm not going to lie in bed stewing about it in the night. And it's those 2 things together, plus that higher sleep drive. So we're attacking it from kind of all the angles. But you can see how there's nothing in here which is around the chamomile tea situation, for example, because that wouldn't fix any of these things. So there's no point trying to relax when we haven't dealt with the thing that was bothering us. Do you see what I mean? Completely. So there's a place for those things, but not if we're not doing the foundation work. And I guess it's like short-term pain for long-term gain. Like, you're keeping your alarm on for 6:30 regardless, because then you're going to sleep better the next night. Yes, exactly.
Which is so interesting. And what about food? So in terms of, are there foods that help sleep, or are there foods that don't help sleep? And timing of food. When should we really be having our evening meal in relation to them when we go to bed?
So I would say, in terms of what's good for sleep and what's not really. If you eat a varied, healthy diet, then you are getting enough in there to sleep well. I work with a lot of people who are taking lots of supplements. I think that if you are worried you're deficient in something, just get tested first. Like, let's not take things until we know. So a lot of people take magnesium because most people are deficient in magnesium. Again, it would be quite rare for me to see somebody who's sleeping really poorly, takes magnesium, and the whole problem's fixed, because by then they're doing these other things that are impacting. So they take the magnesium, but they also need to follow the CBTI program as well. So no, as long as you have a normal diet, then no. I think, again, we can go down this road of becoming too obsessed with had we eaten the wrong thing. If you know something doesn't agree with you, then of course, same with alcohol. If you know it ruins your sleep, then you can expect that you're not going to sleep well after alcohol. So then it's just a choice that you're making. In terms of how close to bedtime, at different times of the month for women particularly will change that, because I think that don't go to bed hungry, don't go to bed full. So people who are fasting, for example, report differences with their sleep. Some people sleep amazingly fasted, other people don't at all. So everybody's sleep needs are different. And I think when it comes to diet, avoid something you know doesn't agree with you. But outside of that, don't go to bed hungry, don't go to bed full. That would be the best advice.
And screen time, you mentioned TV's okay. And I actually spoke to my mum and dad last night and I was like, oh, I've got someone coming on the podcast to talk about sleep. Any questions you guys have? Because I always like to kind of get other people's questions in. And mum was like, well, I want to know about TV because I always watch TV before I go to bed. And does that count as a screen?
No, because it's the distance is far enough away from your face, whereas a laptop or a screen is generally, we're holding it, they're closer. So TV's fine.
Interesting. Okay. So what's the difference between being a bad sleeper and having insomnia?
Do you know what? There's probably not a massive difference other than when it's been going on for longer and starts to feel like it's out of your control. So we would describe signs of insomnia as I've got trouble falling asleep, so it's taking me longer than half an hour to fall asleep. I'm waking through the night. I'm not feeling refreshed during the day, maybe early morning wakening. If it's been going on more than 3 nights a week and it's been going on for longer than 3 months, that would be the official diagnosis that it's insomnia. I would say it doesn't really matter where you are on that spectrum, the same changes will apply. So even if you've only had a week's worth of wake-ups at 3 a.m, if you were to put these things in place, you'd have fixed it by the end of that week. We can nip it in the bud quickly. So it's a spectrum. You know, some people have had it longer and are finding it less tolerable than other people, but generally the same things will fix it wherever you are on the scale.
Okay, interesting. And what are your thoughts on naps?
So napping, if you think about that sleep drive, that appetite for sleep, a nap works against that because it's the equivalent of having a snack. So you've had a snack and now you haven't got your appetite for your dinner. So from that point of view, you're better off trying to fix your bedtime sleep rather than napping to compensate, because the nap is probably going to ruin the next night's sleep. However, if you are not getting enough sleep for something out of your control, like you've had a new baby or your job means that you're working late nights or early mornings or whatever, then a nap is fine. If you take a nap no longer than 25 minutes and you take it as early in the day as you can, so probably not after like 3 p.m, then as long as it's under 25 minutes, it's unlikely to have a big impact on your nighttime sleep. If you go over that, you're getting into the feeling groggy when you wake up nap, but also it's going to start going into deeper sleep, which is going to impact upon the night. So naps are okay. If you sleep poorly at night, I would get rid of the napping because you don't want to waste a bit of nap time when you could be having it at night. But if you're a good sleeper, then no, I mean, I love a little nap.
Okay, fine. It's so fascinating because this whole like a common theme here has been like the appetite for sleep.
Yeah.
And none of this has been about, like you say, like the chamomile tea or like the reading or the temperature of the room or the bed. Because like one of my questions was like, what should we be doing? Well, how should our bedrooms be to optimize sleep? Like if someone's moving house, if someone is looking to change their room in any way, what could they be doing to optimize sleep?
So again, it's whatever works for you. So if you, I suppose like factually, a cooler bedroom is generally better for most people. A comfy bed, you know, my bed should be comfortable. My pillows should support me. I want it to be nice and cool and pretty dark and so on. But we all remember the time where, you know, we had a great night's sleep on someone's, crappy fold out bed, or, I had a terrible sleep in the luxury hotel. So again, it's more about the connections you have to the place than there being a sort of a hard and fast set of rules. So, I would never really particularly recommend a specific mattress to somebody, because it's, if you like a firm one, then you might sleep well on that one. If you don't, you won't. So those things again they're periphery. They're nice. It's nice to have a nice bedroom that you feel great in, but that's not going to fix the problem. If we're ruminating for an hour at 3 a.m, that doesn't come from the nice bedroom. So
fine.
So yeah, there's nothing. But cooler is better. Generally, people sleep better if it's cooler. And
what are the optimum amount of hours we should be getting?
It really is different for everyone, and I think that the better thing to focus on is quality over quantity. So if you can only get 6 hours, but they're really good quality, and you're, by quality, I mean, do you fall asleep pretty quickly? If you wait to go to the toilet, do you go straight back to sleep? Do you feel refreshed enough during the day? You're not having to sleep during the day or have lots of coffee or whatever. That to me is good quality sleep. So if you can only get 6 hours of good quality sleep, and by trying to get more, you end up sacrificing the quality, then 6 hours is right for you. Other people need more sleep. Either way, throughout our life, we go through periods where we can't always achieve the same as what we used to achieve. So for example, jobs and having babies and those kind of things. So listen to your own body. And if you, as I say, focus on the quality using these sort of tips is a better way than trying to reach a goal, because sometimes I work with people and their goal will be, I need to get 8 hours, and we get them to 7.5 and they're still not happy. And I'm like, how much difference could that half an hour possibly make? Like, what is it you're expecting? So it's an interesting conversation to have with them is, what is the state that you're expecting to be in once you reach that half an hour? A bit like someone who's striving to earn £1 billion. Emotionally, how are you expecting to feel when you have the £1 billion? And could you just achieve that in another way? Same with sleep. So I would say, if you feel like I will be so much more refreshed on 8 hours, rather than obsessing about the 8 hours, what else can you do to feel refreshed? Okay, well, I could look at my diet, I could exercise more, I could make sure I'm more hydrated. Because by shifting our focus just to the side of sleep, we're kind of taking the pressure off, because you're never going to get that extra half an hour when you want it that much. Your body clock will just wake you up. It's just not going to work. So just find the state. And, if you're sleeping terribly, if you have a real bad sleep problem, still we'd be saying to you, okay, well, this is something that we're trying to manage and we're doing the best we can. But what else? There's a load of other things that we can do to feel better. So let's make sure we're not trying to out-sleep stress here. If you're stressed, you're never going to feel refreshed, And I'm somebody who, if I'm stressed, I sleep loads. But it makes no difference. I would still feel exhausted all the time. I could nap. It doesn't matter. It's not doing anything. So I think for a lot of people, that's a big one, that if you're stressed, sleep is not your issue. Your issue is stress. You can't outsleep that. There's no way around it.
It's so interesting because there's been a lot of pressure on sleep recently. Like, everyone is thinking about sleep, talking about sleep. Sleep's like the cure of all issues. And actually having this conversation today has just highlighted that it's just another part of health, and by putting pressure on it, it actually makes it worse. And we're thinking it's going to cure everything. Like, it's going to make us digest our food better, it's going to make us less stressed, it's going to make us perform better in the gym, it's going to I mean, maybe it won't do all that.
And it's everything in moderation, isn't it? If you have a perfect diet, healthy diet all the time, that's great. But if it makes you a bit miserable because you'd never go out for dinner, then is that better? Like, we have to do a bit of moderation. The same with sleep. Like, of course, we all know if you have too much to drink, you don't sleep well. But I would never say never drink again if you enjoy a glass of wine. Just accept that every now and then the payoff is that you're not going to get a great sleep, but you had a lovely evening, you socialized, you connected, and you left there feeling like your cup was really full because you love your friends. So yeah, it's in moderation, but sleep is not going to fix everything. And that's where the sleep hygiene becomes a problem, that people have perfect sleep hygiene, which actually is at the expense of the things they enjoy. So they don't socialize, they don't eat what they want, they don't drink what they want. They've changed everything for sleep and it hasn't worked anyway. So yeah, sleep is really important and we do need to prioritize it, especially for people who don't, but it isn't going to fix everything. If you never exercise, you wouldn't have much energy. If you didn't eat well, you won't have much energy. So
interesting.
You have to kind of look at all three, all the pillars, not just the one.
Yeah. And what about gadgets and tracking sleep? Because I feel like there's a lot more of these out there on the market now. What are your thoughts on those?
I've always, up until more recently, so I did have the Aura Ring because I wanted to trial it because so many people I was working with had it. They are more accurate than they used to be, definitely. Whereas before, anything that tracked your sleep was just sort of based on movement. So if you moved a lot during the night, it would say that you'd slept badly. If you laid still but were awake all night, it would probably show that you slept quite well. They are definitely more accurate now. I think I come from the angle of, so what? If I don't sleep well, I know I don't sleep well. I don't need to check. I'm not going to suddenly check it and be surprised that, oh God, I slept terribly last night. I thought I slept like a baby. That never happens. So all that tracking sleep is doing is, again, adding pressure and creating vigilance. So if you wake up in the morning and the first thing you do is check how well you slept, you are making decisions for that day based on this data. The reality is, whether you did or didn't sleep well, we need to just get on with our day. Because if we start changing things because of that, tomorrow night's not going to be any better because I've now added more pressure. So Generally, for me, if someone's struggling to sleep well and they're anxious about it, tracking is the worst thing you can do. It's not it doesn't tell you to sleep better. This is my issue with trackers. I think that it's all very well presenting somebody with the data that they don't sleep well. But if you're not going to back that up with evidence-based suggestions, I mean, you work in this sort of area, and you haven't heard some of these things about going to bed later. So why on the end of the Oura Ring or the Apple Watch, why is it not saying that? Why are we not teaching people that? Instead, we're saying have a good bedtime routine. Well, that's not evidence-based. That's not going to help them. So now what I've done is I've revved somebody's anxiety through the roof because I told them they slept really badly, they didn't get any deep sleep, and they're going to suffer. I'm now also giving them advice that's not going to make it any better either. So for me, tracking is pointless unless we're going to change what we do at the end and give people some really good advice. And you don't need to know, like you already know. I've never worked with anyone who thought they slept great and found out they didn't. So, and I think there has been a study, I want to have a proper look into it, but there has been a study which showed exactly what I would have imagined, that if we lie and tell people they slept really well, they go about their day completely differently. They feel refreshed, they go and do everything they should have done anyway. Same, if we tell people they slept really badly, they change, their mood is different. So it's all about how we interpret, isn't it? If you wake up in the morning and
really, so true. That's so interesting. If you're like, you slept so well last night, didn't you? And
yeah, you can achieve anything today, go for it. Whereas, the Oura Ring, it will say to me, oh, you didn't sleep well last night, take it easier today. I don't agree with that. I'm like, no, still go to the gym, just maybe do less, like just keep going, because not doing stuff because you didn't sleep well is not going to help you tomorrow night. I'm always looking at, well, okay, like, how do we stop it here? How do we nip it in the bud now? So I'm not anti them in terms of, I think they work and I'm sure they're accurate, but I'm not sure how helpful they are. If you have a problem, if you don't have a sleep problem, they're probably really interesting.
Yeah.
So it all depends why you're using it.
Really, really good points. So what about the myth of counting sheep, listening to rain sounds or listening to wave sounds?
So I guess the counting sheep is based on, again, it's sort of grounding yourself in the moment, which actually is a really good technique for relaxing. So again, if we go back to this idea that it's nice to try and relax and ground yourself in a moment, if that was then to lead to sleep, then great. If we're doing it because I think it's going to make me sleep, then it's probably not going to work. So I like to recommend to people, if they wake in the middle of the night and they can't get back to sleep, before you get up, do a grounding exercise, which would be similar to counting, which is, what can I see? What can I smell? What can I hear? How does the duvet feel? How does the pillow feel? And really become aware of every sort of part of that moment. Because if we can ground ourselves in the moment, we're more likely to fall back to sleep. So counting sheep would be a really similar thing, that if you can, distract yourself from everything else that's going on. When your mind wanders, sort of just gently bringing it back, using that mindful approach. So if you count back from, 100, how many numbers do we get through before we're thinking about something again? So gently bringing it back again. So I think all of those things are great. And again, don't reserve them for nighttime. If we could regularly, I actually got, through a period of stress a few years ago, I got this Casio watch, which instantly I've now seen everybody wearing. So I was like, I think I bought back the Casio watch.
I love it.
So I had a few years ago, I got this purely because every hour on the hour it will beep. And I needed something to remind me to breathe and sort of notice what was happening. And I found it really useful at the time. So every time it would beep, and I was shocked to find I couldn't even do a minute at the time. I was so my head was so full that I could barely get 10 seconds where I wasn't thinking about something else. So I would really advise people to have a go at that. If you say, every time when I boil the kettle, for the length of the kettle boiling, I'll be mindful just of what I can see, what I can smell, what I can hear, what I'm doing, what my feet feel like. And you'll be really shocked at how hard it is to do that.
I'll be terrible at that.
Yeah.
I'll be absolutely terrible at that. It's actually really interesting because I was going into this conversation, I was like, oh my God, honestly, I've got the worst sleep hygiene, worst sleep health. Don't prioritize it. But actually listening to this or having this conversation today, I'm actually not that bad, because one of the things I do when I can't sleep and my mind's racing is I'll get up, put my lights on, go to the loo, splash my face, even redo my skincare, wash my hands, spray. I will literally pretend to go back to sleep again as if it was the first time.
So the routine works. Yeah.
Nice. And I'm and I used to think, oh my God, I'm just not addressing the problem. I'm just ignoring it. But actually things that you've kind of said today is kind of well, just get on with it type thing. And don't make it into a big deal. And I've never made sleep into a big deal to the point where I don't neglect it, but I just don't.
You obviously trust it. You trust that it's going to work when it needs to. So therefore it's...
Everyone's like, oh God, how many hours do you get? And I'm like, I don't know, 6 or 7. I'm not sure. Like I don't count it. I'm not like, oh my God, it's 11, 12, 1, 2, 3. I'm not kind of stressing about it.
Yeah.
I'm kind of just like, if I get some deep sleep and I wake up and and like, even when I want to have that early night, I kind of like make sure I'm doing loads to stop myself having the early night. I'm guessing causing that appetite again.
Yes, because naturally it's obviously not your circadian rhythm is not to go to bed early. And people fight that. There's no point going to bed at 9 if naturally you don't develop melatonin and you're a midnight person. So it's a balance, isn't it? If you're not prioritizing sleep because you're on your phone watching Netflix until midnight, that's different. If you're not getting tired until later and you've got an evening that's full and you're doing... that there are definitely things out there where they would say, if you're not prioritizing and giving yourself the opportunity for 8 hours, it's really bad. And I'm not saying that the science behind that isn't true. I just think it's within moderation.
So this question is actually more probably targeted for my brother. And I want to know the difference between the hours you get pre-midnight compared to the hours you get post-midnight. Because he's changing his routine now, but he was very much going to bed late, wake up late. And we used to always be like, no, that's not right. You should be going to bed earlier, waking up earlier. So does it matter? Or is 6 hours, 6 hours?
So I think, and somebody might tell me I'm wrong about this, my understanding is that sort of myth comes from the idea that when you first fall asleep, you tend to get the deepest sleep in the first part of your night, which from a caveman perspective is because if you don't know how much sleep you're going to get, you need to get the deep bit early in case you're going to get attacked after 4 hours. So it wasn't safe to sleep necessarily for long periods of time then. So we get the deepest sleep earlier on in the night, which I think has translated into people thinking that the earlier you go to bed, the deeper the sleep would be. My experience, no, it won't make a difference.
Okay.
So no, if you're somebody who falls asleep easier with a better sleep appetite at midnight until 7, than 10 until 5, then 12 until 7 is fine.
Fine, because a lot of creatives kind of get their inspiration at night. And I'm just thinking, you're not just tired all the time.
Yes.
But clearly not. If you're getting those 7 hours and you've got the appetite and your deep sleep's happening, then it doesn't matter when you're getting it. Yeah. Because also, I guess if you work night shifts, for example, then again, it's similar.
Shift work is difficult because some people can do it and some people can't. And if you can't do it, it's really difficult to do anything about it because some people can adapt their cycle within a week between a night and a day shift. Most people can't do it, so it leaves them feeling very jet lagged most of the time. So I think within reason, as long as your general bedtime is within the right portion of the clock, i.e. the nighttime hours, then it's okay. If you're shifting to where you can't fall asleep until 3 a.m. and what that means is you can't wake up until 10 and that doesn't fit your lifestyle, then you'd need to be using these techniques to try and pull it back again to get back to where we want to go, which you do just by setting your alarm early, which would be brutal for that person because they'll be in a deep sleep at 6 a.m. if they don't wake up till 10. So it requires quite a bit of motivation. And it's harder for, depending on what your job is and what time you have to get up.
For sure. Okay, interesting. So what is your nighttime routine?
So my nighttime routine has been the same forever. So I've got 2 kids and now my eldest is 15. We're now in this weird thing where she goes to bed later than me, which I tried to stop for ages, and then I realized I just have no evening because I'm kind of like spending all night trying to get her to go to sleep, and she's just, teenagers don't fall asleep so early, do they? They need more sleep, but she just can't get to sleep too early. And I'm resisting that temptation to make her go to bed early because this is how we instill a sleep problem in her, that, making her go to bed at 9 so she lies in bed for 2 hours tossing and turning is not going to help. So my routine is that I try ideally to kind of have everybody in their own rooms by about 9:30. I go into my room, I tidy my bedroom before bed because I hate waking up with a messy bedroom. So I tidy my room. I sleep on my own. I don't live with a partner, so I sleep in my own bed, so I have plenty of space. I tidy my room, clean my teeth, wash my face, Kindle for 10, 15 minutes, and then I fall asleep. So, and I've been doing that for years and years. So for me, the Kindle is a massive sleep connector, and to the point where I really hate it if I go away and forget to take it. I can still sleep, but it's never an issue, but I just don't like not having that. Fine. Not having that routine.
So I guess it's about having those connectors, whatever it is.
Whatever it is. If it works for you, it works. Because people will say, is it bad that I read before bed? And I would say, well, do you sleep well? Yes. No. Then it's fine. Well, if you enjoy it and it works for you, then it's fine. If you read for half an hour and then you're wide awake for 2 hours, then the reading is not connecting to sleeping, in which case just do it downstairs. Forget it. Go to bed when you're tired. Change the routine. So it's a bit of common sense, I think, that, you know, if it works for you, it works for you. And if you sleep okay, it's fine.
I think, again, with all this talk on sleep, it's so, like, you can easily kind of deep analyze your deep analysis of your sleep, and you're like, is this working? Is this not? And like ripping it apart a bit, and you're like, actually, if it don't fix something that's not broken,
if it's fine, it's fine. Because people will often bring a sleep tracker in, and they'll say, look, this is showing that I'm not getting enough deep sleep. The problem is we can't micromanage the sleep stages like that, you know. So many things, sleep, you know, if you imagine sleep is like a hotel, we only really understand a couple of rooms. You know, there's a lot going on in our brains as well. And so many things impact our sleep, hormones, worries, you know, health things that we don't even know are happening. You know, maybe I'm going to get a cold in 4 days' time, and I don't know that that's the reason why I slept badly. So I always say to people, when you wake up in the morning, just put last night behind you. Don't agonize trying to work out what went wrong. So people will often feel like, yeah, but I always, you know, I've been following the plan and it worked, and then last night was terrible. So I say the problem now is that last night was terrible in your mind. So because you've interpreted it as terrible as opposed to a normal bad night, which we all have, because you're interpreting it as terrible, you're now going down that road of what can I do to fix it, when actually we need to just do nothing. Just trust the process, carry on with your day and go to bed later tonight, or carry on with your normal routine. So the bad night is not an issue. The bad night is normal. What matters is how we interpret and what we're going to do next. And you know, I'm a sleep specialist, and I have bad nights. You know, certainly hormonally they're worse. You get too hot when we get into perimenopause, menopause, sleep suffers. So there's lots of times in life when sleep will become a little bit out of your control. The skill is learning to believe that whilst it's not ideal, it's not in that moment life-threatening. So there's no need for your adrenaline to be sky high. So work on your coping beliefs. What can I do? What can I do to feel better? How can I change my mindset toward this? Do I need to have 5 minutes to really mope and wallow on the fact that I'm so annoyed I didn't sleep well before today? Cool, I give myself 5 minutes and now I'm getting on with it. We cope so much better than we think we do.
Yeah. And what about changing your sheets? Like to refresh, to restart?
Yeah, I mean, I love the day of the week when I've got clean sheets on. I love that night. So yeah, again, if you love that, then definitely. Yeah. I really like that. It's not going to fix a sleep problem, but certainly it's nice to love going to bed. Definitely, and whatever you can do to enjoy it is good for you. Yeah.
Because I do like to read before bed or watch something. It kind of changes depending on what I fancy doing. I like that little wind down time, and I have lavender spray and I've had it for years and I spray my pillows with lavender, and that probably doesn't do anything, but for me it's like spray your pillows, getting ready for bed. I like the smell, I have a candle, but those are all like, it's just like creating that ritual and that routine. And it's, for me, smell is so important.
That's interesting.
And I think it causes something similar and something routine no matter where I am. Yeah. So even if I'm away or staying at a friend's house or wherever I am, my room and my bed will always smell the same. And for me, that creates
a good connector. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think I like that.
Yeah. And I think things, so in that instance, it's not the lavender that's doing anything. It's the connection that you have. Similarly, if you'd had a really bad experience when you were younger with lavender, it wouldn't work. So what works for you isn't going to work for the next person. So there's no prescriptive list, but there is a step-by-step foundational list, which is this stuff that can work. After that, it's whatever works. You know, people can trust their own, their own beliefs. And I think a big one as well is like, if you and your partner don't have the same sleep pattern, that can be a problem. So don't force yourself to go to bed at the same time as a partner. And I know that's a bit jarring because it's a nice thing to do, and it is. But if you live together, you are better off sort of going to bed together, having a chat, having a cuddle, doing whatever you want to do, and then you come back out if you need to, because there's nothing worse than lying next to a partner who's gone to sleep when you can't sleep. So we work with a lot of people who it sort of was triggered by that. So they get this sleep pressure because they're thinking, oh God, he's already asleep and now he's snoring and I hate him. So you have to, you just don't do it. Don't try and force yourself. You can't force yourself to sleep, to get to sleep faster. So come back when it's your bedtime.
So interesting. Kathryn, you've made this so much more manageable. I feel like everyone's like, oh my God, what do I need to buy? What do I need to do in sleep? It's like so hard. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
We have a final question about food again. So what would your last meal be? Ooh. Starter, main course and dessert.
Ooh, okay. My absolute go-to favourite lunch is an M&S prawn sandwich with salt and vinegar squares.
Yeah.
So I don't really have a starter because it's more of a lunch. I'd probably be annoyed if it was my last on earth and I hadn't thought of a starter. And then for dessert would be, I think like biscuits and tea.
This is just great. No one said this. I love it. So you go to M&S, you get your prawn sandwich with your salt and vinegar squares, and then you'd have a cup of English breakfast tea.
English breakfast tea with digestive biscuits,
I love that.
Because this is a health and wellbeing product. Everyone else is probably like, oh, I'd have my organic quinoa.
No, digestive. Everyone's like bolognese or roast or like whatever.
Or a roast,
I think I prefer the first one. This is great.
Yeah, I'm obsessed with that. That sandwich and crisp, and to the point where if they didn't have the crisp, because M&S don't sell salt and vinegar squares, so I have to go to a separate shop to get them, which I'm willing to do on those moments because it's important.
Yeah.
But to the point where if I couldn't get the crisps, I probably wouldn't even bother eating the sandwich.
Wow.
I know.
This is amazing. Well, we do have an M&S nearby and it is kind of nearly lunchtime. So maybe you should go down there. Kathryn, thank you so much.
That's been great.
It's been so refreshing and I feel like everyone's going to be like, oh my God, I can actually do this. So yeah, really manageable, easy steps. Thank you so much.
Thank you.